In February 1943, the Allied forces in North Africa faced a dire situation. The campaign in Tunisia had stalled. Morale among the troops was low. Supply lines were fragile, and the German Afrika Korps, led by the formidable Erwin Rommel, maintained a strategic advantage in mobility and defensive positions. American forces, inexperienced in desert warfare, had suffered significant setbacks at Kasserine Pass, where hastily organized attacks had failed, leading to high casualties and shattered confidence. In the midst of this chaos, General George S. Patton was appointed to take command of the U.S. II Corps, a force in desperate need of discipline and inspiration. Patton arrived at the front on February 5, 1943, and immediately assessed the situation with his trademark intensity, noting both the operational deficiencies and the psychological state of his men. In his first report to headquarters, he wrote, "This army will either fight like men or will die as cowards. There is no middle ground." This blunt assessment reflected not only Patton's aggressive style, but also his belief that leadership required confronting both fear and incompetence head-on. From his arrival, Patton implemented an unrelenting regimen of discipline, training, and accountability. He introduced daily drills, rigorous inspections, and a strict code of conduct, insisting that soldiers understand the importance of every order and the consequences of inaction. Patton's philosophy was that confidence in battle was built through preparation, repetition, and clarity of command. His famous quotation, "The object of war is not to die for your country, but to make the other bastard die for his," became a guiding principle that informed his approach to operational readiness. By emphasizing precision, speed, and the relentless pursuit of objectives, Patton immediately began transforming a demoralized and disorganized corps into a unit capable of executing complex maneuvers under fire. Patton's leadership was as much psychological as it was tactical. He understood that fear and uncertainty could paralyze soldiers, and he addressed it directly. On February 7th, he held a series of speeches in front of frontline troops, pacing the sand of the Tunisian desert, gesturing emphatically, and speaking in a tone that combined fury, clarity, and humor. He recounted moments of failure at Kasserine Pass, attributing them to lack of preparation and poor leadership, and juxtaposed it with the potential for decisive victory if soldiers committed fully to his vision. Observers noted that Patton's energy was contagious. Within days, reports indicated that soldiers were more alert, better organized, and beginning to trust their chain of command. Even officers initially resistant to his style recognized the immediate impact on operational cohesion. One of the first tactical changes Patton instituted was a reorganization of units to maximize mobility and firepower. He analyzed intelligence reports, German troop positions, and terrain features, and restructured battalions into more flexible formations capable of rapid attack and defense. Patton's insistence on mechanized maneuverability, coordination of tanks, artillery, and infantry, contrasted sharply with prior cautious approaches that had allowed Rommel to dominate engagements with swift counterattacks. Within the first week, American patrols reported greater coordination, fewer miscommunications, and more aggressive forward positioning. Patton himself observed, "A soldier who hesitates loses not only the fight, but his life." Clarity and speed must become instinct. Patton's interaction with subordinate commanders also reflected his uncompromising style. He met individually with officers, challenging their assumptions, questioning their planning, and setting precise expectations for performance. He demanded accountability for both successes and failures, making it clear that incompetence would not be tolerated. Yet, Patton also provided guidance and mentorship, offering tactical lessons derived from his previous campaigns in both World War I and North Africa. One officer recorded Patton's words during a briefing, "I will not waste men in foolish attacks, but I expect you to seize every opportunity." Hesitation is the enemy. Through these interactions, he reinforced the philosophy that leadership was inseparable from responsibility, and that courage was cultivated, not innate. By mid-February, the impact of Patton's methods became visible on the battlefield. Skirmishes against German positions, once disorganized and costly, began to show signs of tactical efficiency. Troops advanced with coordinated artillery support. Tanks maneuvered in unison with infantry, and reconnaissance was more thorough and timely. German officers noted the change in American forces, reporting to Rommel that U.S. troops were now more aggressive, disciplined, and capable of sustained operations. Patton's meticulous planning, combined with his personal engagement with soldiers and officers alike, had fundamentally altered the operational capacity of the two corps in less than 2 weeks. Supply chain efficiency, a critical component of desert warfare, also improved under Patton's direction. He identified bottlenecks in fuel, ammunition, and food distribution, and worked closely with logistics officers to streamline processes. Patton often drove himself to the front lines to inspect supply depots, personally ensuring that frontline units had the resources necessary to execute maneuvers. One diary entry from February 18, 1943 reads, "An army marches on its stomach and fires with its belly. No plan can succeed if men starve or freeze. Logistics are as lethal as the enemy's guns." This attention to detail, combined with his focus on discipline, ensured that soldiers were both physically and mentally prepared for upcoming offensives. Patton also emphasized the importance of intelligence and reconnaissance. He personally reviewed captured German documents, aerial photographs, and intercepted communications, using the information to adjust tactics and anticipate enemy movements. By February 20th, Patton's headquarters had developed a detailed operational map that allowed commanders to exploit weaknesses in the German defensive lines. He instructed reconnaissance teams to operate aggressively, often personally accompanying patrols to demonstrate expectations. Patton's focus on real-time intelligence reinforced his belief that victory was determined not just by courage or firepower, but by superior information and decisive action. Morale remained a cornerstone of Patton's transformation. He leveraged both praise and criticism to motivate soldiers, ensuring that successes were celebrated publicly while mistakes were addressed privately but thoroughly. In several speeches delivered to frontline units, he emphasized pride, honor, and responsibility, connecting personal achievement to collective mission objectives. Troops reported a renewed sense of purpose, often quoting Patton's mantra, "Lead me, follow me, or get out of my way." Within 30 days, this combination of discipline, preparation, and morale boosting had transformed the two corps from a hesitant, disorganized force into one capable of coordinated, offensive action. Patton's approach to enemy engagement also reflected his strategic philosophy. He emphasized speed and initiative, ensuring that attacks were decisive and that hesitation never allowed the Germans to regroup. He personally oversaw artillery barges, tank maneuvers, and infantry advances, making adjustments in real time. Officers recorded as frequent reminders that war required both audacity and calculation. Fortune favors the bold, but preparation is the mother of luck. These words encapsulated Patton's method of instilling confidence while maintaining operational control. As the 30-day transformation neared completion, Patton's personal attention to detail extended even to medical and support units, which he considered essential for sustained combat operations. Field hospitals were inspected, casualty evacuation protocols revised, and morale among medical staff boosted through direct engagement. Patton understood that every component of the Army, from the front lines to the rear echelon, contributed to operational effectiveness. His approach demonstrated a holistic understanding of command that contrasted with generals who focused narrowly on tactics or strategy without considering the human elements of warfare. By the end of February 1943, the two corps under Patton had become a force transformed. Reports from German intelligence noted the increased aggression and efficiency of American troops, and Allied command recognized the dramatic shift in operational capability. Within just 30 days, Patton's insistence on discipline, preparation, speed, and morale had turned an army on the brink of collapse into one capable of sustained offensive action. His methods, though often controversial and personally demanding, had proven that decisive, hands-on leadership could reshape an entire corps in a single month. In reflecting on these changes, it is clear that Patton's impact extended beyond tactics and strategy. He instilled a philosophy of leadership, courage, and accountability that influenced not just the immediate campaign, but the long-term development of American forces. His combination of psychological insight, logistical oversight, and tactical brilliance provided a model of command that continues to be studied by military historians. Through this transformation, the men under his command learned that leadership was not abstract, but lived, embodied in the clarity, courage, and presence of their general. Finally, the lessons of Patton's first 30 days remain relevant for anyone studying leadership, teamwork, or crisis management. How does one instill confidence in hesitant teams? How can preparation and discipline amplify raw talent? And what is the balance between audacity and calculation in moments of extreme pressure? These questions, implicit in the narrative of Patton's North African Command, invite the audience to reflect on the human dimensions of leadership, courage, and transformation. They provide both engagement and education, prompting viewers to consider not just what happened, but why it mattered and how the principles apply beyond the battlefield. By early March 1943, Patton's transformation of the two corps was becoming more apparent to Allied high command. What had been a fragmented, hesitant force was now displaying remarkable cohesion, speed, and initiative. Patton's meticulous inspections of every unit, infantry, armor, artillery, and support, continued day after day. Diaries from subordinate officers describe him appearing unexpectedly in camp, observing exercises, and delivering immediate, often scathing, feedback. He frequently reminded them, an army is only as good as its discipline and attention to detail. Every soldier must know his role as clearly as I know mine. This insistence on accountability created a ripple effect. Officers became sharper, enlisted men more confident, and units that had previously hesitated now moved decisively in maneuvers designed to emulate actual combat conditions. Patton's philosophy was clear. Preparation under pressure breeds instinctive action. The psychological transformation of the troops paralleled their operational improvement. In early March, several American units that had once been prone to panic under fire now demonstrated composure and initiative in simulated assaults. Patton's personal interactions, which combined fiery speeches, humor, and individual attention, had instilled both fear of failure and pride in achievement. Soldiers reported feeling a renewed sense of purpose, understanding that success required obedience, courage, and speed. One sergeant noted in his diary, "He made us believe that hesitation would kill us, but precision would make us unstoppable." And slowly we believed it. By focusing simultaneously on morale and discipline, Patton reshaped the Army's psychological landscape, ensuring that operational changes were internalized at every level of command. Patton's focus on mobility became a defining feature of the transformation. He organized tanks, mechanized infantry, and artillery into highly flexible task forces capable of rapid reaction. In mid-March, field reports indicate that reconnaissance units could penetrate German lines and relay intelligence to headquarters faster than ever before, while tank units could exploit those intelligence gains with coordinated attacks. Patton personally oversaw exercises, timing maneuvers with stopwatch, and analyzing every delay or misstep. He believed that speed was both a tactical advantage and a psychological weapon. By moving quickly, his forces would force the enemy to react offensively, losing initiative and morale. Field officers frequently reported that Patton's obsession with timing was relentless, yet produced measurable results in efficiency and battlefield confidence. Operational planning under Patton also emphasized integration across nationalities. British and American officers often found themselves frustrated by his blunt criticisms and uncompromising standards, yet they could not deny the immediate results. Patton personally coordinated joint exercises between U.S. and British units, ensuring that communication protocols, supply chains, and command hierarchies were synchronized. A diary entry from March 12, 1943, notes, "Unity of action is more than coordination. It is understanding, anticipation, and respect. Where one falters, all falter." These words capture his philosophy. The transformation of the Corps depended not just on discipline, but on cohesion across cultural, organizational, and tactical differences. The improvements in supply and logistics, which Patton had prioritized, now bore fruit. By mid-March, fuel, ammunition, and provisions were reaching the front lines more reliably, enabling sustained maneuvers and reducing operational pauses that previously gave Rommel opportunities to counterattack. Patton personally inspected convoys, noting inefficiencies, reorganizing routes, and insisting that officers maintain detailed records. In his diary, he wrote, "An army without fuel and bullets is an army without teeth. Discipline is meaningless if we cannot feed the machine that fights." This attention to the lifeblood of combat, logistics, was a critical factor in the rapid improvement of operational capability. The integration of intelligence into operations became another hallmark of Patton's approach. He reviewed captured German reports, interrogated prisoners of war, and analyzed aerial reconnaissance with a precision that often left staff officers overwhelmed. Intelligence was no longer a passive resource, but a living component of decision-making. By March 15th, operational plans were being adjusted daily based on real-time intelligence, allowing U.S. units to anticipate enemy movements rather than simply react. Patton emphasized that foresight was a general's greatest weapon, and that preparation multiplied the effectiveness of courage on the battlefield. Patton also insisted on rigorous adherence to training in realistic conditions. Units practiced night maneuvers, desert navigation, and mock engagements with enemy positions, often under extreme physical strain. Officers wrote in their diaries about Patton riding along, observing exercises, and stopping everything to correct the smallest mistake. He believed that errors revealed weaknesses in both leadership and individual soldiers, and he exploited them as opportunities for learning. His philosophy was that repeated exposure to high-pressure simulations would ensure that in actual combat, reactions were instinctive, confident, and precise. Morale and esprit de corps continued to be central to Patton's strategy. He used personal interactions, letters to officers, and even theatrical displays of authority to inspire confidence. On March 18th, he reportedly inspected a frontline unit during a sudden storm, rallying soldiers with a mix of humor and intensity, stating, "Storm or no storm, the enemy won't wait. Neither will we. Courage is our constant companion." This direct involvement reinforced a message that leadership was tangible and visible, and that soldiers' performance reflected their general's commitment. In mid-March, Patton's transformation of the two corps began producing measurable combat results. Reconnaissance raids discovered weaknesses in German defenses. Artillery coordination improved, and American tank units executed maneuvers previously thought impossible given their inexperience. Rommel reportedly remarked in intercepted correspondence that these Americans are no longer children in the desert. They move like men who have been taught to strike and hold without hesitation. This acknowledgement from the enemy underscores a dramatic shift in the operational effectiveness achieved in just over a month. Patton's relentless drive also reshaped command culture within the Corps. Officers learned that preparation, discipline, and rapid response were non-negotiable. He encouraged initiative but within strict boundaries, making it clear that every action must support the overall operational plan. Diary entries from staff officers reveal a sense of awe mixed with fear. Patton's energy and demands were exhausting, but undeniably effective. The transformation was not limited to tactics. It had become an institutional ethos, embedding confidence, rigor, and adaptability into every unit. Medical readiness was another focus. Patton understood that sustained offensive operations could falter if casualty care was inadequate. Field hospitals were inspected, protocols were revised, and evacuation procedures streamlined. Soldiers' health, nutrition, and recovery were seen as critical to the success of operations. Patton noted in his diary, "A wounded soldier who survives fights another day. One who dies unnecessarily diminishes all that we achieve." This integration of human welfare with operational planning reflected a holistic view of leadership rarely seen in contemporary generals. By late March, observers across the Allied command noted the remarkable transformation. The two corps could conduct night assaults, rapid flanking maneuvers, and coordinated strikes involving combined arms, all while maintaining discipline and morale. Patton's personal engagement, relentless training, and operational oversight had turned inexperience into competence and fear into confidence. Reports from British liaison officers emphasized that the speed of change was unprecedented. 30 days under Patton had done more to reform the Army than months of previous efforts. Finally, in reflecting on the broader implications of these 30 days, it becomes clear that Patton's impact extended beyond immediate combat results. He had demonstrated the power of direct leadership, the integration of psychology and tactics, and the moral imperative of protecting soldiers through preparation. What lessons can modern leaders draw from this? How can discipline, clarity, and personal accountability transform hesitant teams into effective forces? How did Patton's intense style simultaneously inspire and intimidate? And what does that tell us about human motivation under extreme conditions? These questions linger naturally at the end of the narrative, inviting the audience to engage deeply with the story, drawing lessons not only about warfare, but about leadership, courage, and transformation. As April 1943 began, Patton's transformation of the Two Corps was now unmistakable, and the desert landscape of Tunisia bore witness to a force revitalized by discipline, speed, and audacity. Field reports detail battalions moving with a precision previously thought unattainable, tank units maneuvering through sand dunes with coordination rivaling Rommel's Afrika Korps, and artillery units adjusting fire almost instinctively based on intelligence fed from reconnaissance. Patton personally reviewed the deployment maps every morning, often standing for hours in the Tunisian sun, analyzing potential enemy responses to every conceivable maneuver. His intensity was legendary. Officers reported that his presence at briefings was equal parts fear and inspiration. Every delay is a loss. Every hesitation is a gift to the enemy, he reminded them. In these first days of April, the men had internalized the rhythm he demanded, and what had been chaotic desert warfare was beginning to look like a choreographed operation. The human element of leadership was as prominent as the operational improvements. Patton's diaries reveal that he spent hours with individual soldiers and officers, noting personal strengths, weaknesses, and motivations. He challenged timid officers, praised those who displayed initiative, and engaged directly with enlisted men, often using blunt humor to instill pride. A lieutenant later recounted, "He knew our fears before we did, yet he turned them into determination. Every word, every glance reminded us that we were capable of far more than we believed." This focus on the individual was revolutionary. Patton did not simply command units. He transformed them psychologically, turning doubt into confidence and chaos into order. Patton's approach to mobility became even more pronounced as operations escalated. Combined arms maneuvers were conducted daily, integrating armor, infantry, artillery, and engineers in ways that mimicked real combat scenarios. Maps captured from German units indicated that Rommel was increasingly concerned about the speed and decisiveness of U.S. maneuvers. Patton's methods emphasized rapid exploitation of weaknesses, often instructing units to strike before the enemy could consolidate. Officers noted that these tactics demanded both precision and courage, yet the transformation in the Two Corps meant that hesitation became rare. Soldiers executed orders with a level of coordination that reflected a deep understanding of Patton's operational philosophy. The integration of intelligence into every facet of command was another defining feature. Patton required daily briefings that synthesized information from captured documents, prisoner interrogations, and area reconnaissance. This intelligence-driven approach allowed for real-time adjustments in tactics and ensured that American forces often held initiative rather than reacting defensively. Staff officers described Patton's insistence on intelligence as bordering on obsession, but the results were undeniable. Ambushes were avoided, counterattacks anticipated, and terrain advantages fully exploited. One report noted, "We moved like a machine, guided by eyes we never saw and minds we only guessed at, Patton's mind." Morale building continued to be central to the campaign. Patton visited units at all hours, often in hazardous conditions, demonstrating that no distance, storm, or enemy threat would deter him. In one documented instance on April 5th, he walked along the front lines during a sandstorm, rallying soldiers and reminding them of the stakes. "This army will not falter. We move because others cannot. We strike because they hesitate," he shouted over the wind. Such visible leadership reinforced the idea that Patton's presence was both protective and motivating, turning fear into determination. Letters from soldiers of the Two Corps repeatedly mentioned the almost tangible aura of energy he brought, a combination of discipline, audacity, and personal engagement. Patton's relationships with subordinate officers continued to shape the Corps' performance. He challenged generals, battalion commanders, and staff officers alike, pushing them to anticipate enemy movements and think multiple steps ahead. Diaries reveal that some officers were initially intimidated by his relentless questioning, yet they gradually came to recognize that it improved their decision-making under pressure. His insistence on accountability created a culture where every officer felt personally responsible for both success and failure, a principle that amplified the efficiency of every unit. Operational outcomes during the second half of April reflected these transformations. Patrols now penetrated German lines with minimal losses. Artillery fire was coordinated with near-perfect timing, and infantry assaults were executed with precision that minimized exposure. Observers from both the Allied and German sides remarked on the change. Rommel's intercepted correspondence noted, "The Americans are no longer the hesitant force I once underestimated. Patton has instilled a deadly efficiency." This acknowledgement from the enemy highlights a profound effect at just 30 days under a commander of exceptional vision and intensity. Logistics continued to improve under Patton's scrutiny. Supply lines, once inconsistent, now operated like clockwork, ensuring that frontline units received fuel, ammunition, and provisions exactly when needed. Patton personally inspected depots, restructured transportation schedules, and collaborated with engineers to ensure routes were clear and functional. This operational reliability allowed troops to act with confidence, knowing that resources would not fail them. Patton himself wrote, "Preparation in the rear is a decisive edge in the front." By April 20th, the II Corps was no longer merely competent. It was aggressive, proactive, and strategically dominant in localized engagements. Soldiers were acting on instincts shaped by preparation. Officers were thinking ahead of enemy movements. And Patton's presence ensured that no opportunity for advantage went unexploited. Coordinated attacks began to dislodge entrenched German positions, setting the stage for the final stages of the Tunisian campaign. Every success reinforced Patton's belief that disciplined, aggressive leadership could reshape an army in a short period. Patton's use of psychological warfare extended even to German forces. Rapid maneuvers, combined with feints and deceptive positioning, created uncertainty and fear among Rommel's troops. Reports from captured German officers noted confusion and surprise at the audacity of American movements. Patton's combination of operational efficiency, speed, and morale cultivation created a force that struck decisively while maintaining internal cohesion, a combination that Rommel, despite his brilliance, struggled to counter. Medical and support units were fully integrated into the operational strategy. Patton emphasized that every element of the Army, from frontline infantry to medics and engineers, contributed to combat effectiveness. He inspected field hospitals, revised casualty evacuation plans, and ensured that soldiers knew they could rely on their rear echelon. This holistic approach reduced fatigue, improved morale, and maintained momentum. A lieutenant noted, "Patton sees the war in every detail, from bullets to bandages." The final week of April 1943 marked the culmination of Patton's 30-day transformation. The II Corps could execute complex, coordinated assaults, maintain logistical integrity, and sustain morale in the face of adversity. Reports from staff officers revealed that units moved with confidence, executed orders precisely, and displayed the audacity Patton demanded. What had been a demoralized, inexperienced Corps had become a disciplined, aggressive, and competent fighting force, a testament to his relentless focus on preparation, speed, and morale. In reflection, the changes Patton enacted during these 30 days were not merely tactical, but deeply cultural, shaping the ethos of the II Corps in ways that persisted throughout the remainder of the war. His insistence on accountability, preparation, and psychological engagement turned fear into courage, hesitation into action, and chaos into coordinated offense. It became clear to Allied command that leadership, as embodied by Patton, could transform an army faster than conventional doctrine might suggest. Finally, consider the lessons embedded in this story. How can leadership transform not just tactics, but the very mindset of those under command? What balance between discipline, morale, and audacity is required to turn a hesitant force into a capable one? How did Patton's methods anticipate modern principles of organizational management and human motivation? And most importantly, what can we, as observers, learn about courage, preparation, and responsibility from a general who reshaped an entire corps in 30 days? These questions invite the audience to reflect, interact, and engage with the story on a personal and educational level, bridging history with lessons for leadership today.